Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here, and we're going to review some of the histogram information that we just looked at, along with beginning to use our knowledge of histograms and this idea of distribution, variations, to kind of tackle some different missions within our simulator related to our australopes and all of those different organisms. So before we begin, a few things we need to make sure we understand clearly. Number one is that whenever we describe a population at a specific point, we're describing a generation or a set of organisms within the current population. So, a generation is a group of individuals born and living at about the same time. So, whether they're old or young, these organisms within this time living in that same population are all within this general generation of one another. So, anytime that we use different histograms or we're describing different traits found within a population, we're really describing that generation of organisms within that population. So, for example, when we're looking at like these graphs here, all of these histograms here relate to a generation of australopes, okay, and australope populations, and those different traits and how they are distributed and how the variations are distributed within the graphs themselves. So, if you remember, distribution is the number of individuals within each individuals with each trait in a population. So, whenever we have a population, we can look at a specific trait, say neck length here, and each one of these bars is the distribution or the number of individuals with each of those traits. So when we look at the distribution here, we can see that we really don't have one variation or one trait that is more or less present. We don't have one trait or one set or group of traits that really stands out. What we really can say here when we look at the neck length is that the variation or the differences in traits are pretty much spread out all over the place. Okay. So when we're describing the population, we would look at the neck length and say, you know what? The variation is pretty much spread out all over. And the distribution of those traits, or remember, the number of individuals within those traits doesn't show any clear patterns. And we can use these histograms to kind of answer that big question of how do we describe a population, that big focus question. So anytime we're describing a population, okay, we say a population can be described by the traits present and the number of individuals who have each of those traits. So in other words, the traits present are those different variations, whether it's a low neck length on the left side of this graph or a high neck length on the right side of this graph, and the number of individuals within those traits. So on this side of the graph, notice the very first neck length, that low neck length, we have a very small amount of organisms versus at the very end, we have maybe a medium to large amount of long necked australopes. So whenever we're describing those populations, we talk about the distribution in relation to the histogram. We talk about the different variations, how many of them. We kind of look at the histogram to say, okay, if the left side of the graph has a low number of armor or a low number of a specific amount of fur or speed, then the right side has a large amount. And we use that distribution to describe our population. So when we read all those histograms, that's how we go about understanding the distribution and the variation within that generation. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, reach out to me. We can definitely break down different aspects of histograms and how to read them. Otherwise, you're going to start these missions here in our simulator in the next set of slides. You're going to answer some questions before diving into these missions, but these missions are really going to test your understanding of histograms. So whenever you look at these missions, you'll see a few things. You'll see the mission number, and it'll tell you what to do. It'll say set up a thorn palm population where all the thorn palms have a medium set of thorns. And then you'll see this drop-down box. Don't worry about the drop-down box for now. Just worry about what the mission's asking you to do. Set up a thorn palm population where all the thorn palms have a medium set of thorns. So you're going to go into the simulator for these missions, and you'll see it on the next set of slides. You're probably going to want to zoom in on maybe a small group or a few of them. And you're going to want to go to that biotic factor for that specific thorn palm in this case, or the specific organism. And you're going to need to find its feature that I was talking about. So in the mission one, it was talking about its thorn size. So there's its thorn size. And notice we have our histograms here. Thorn size, it has the number of thorn palms. It has the size of the thorns on the bottom. And remember, we can kind of move these toggles here to change not only the distribution of the different size thorns, but how high or low the variation is with all of the different sizes. So your job will be to toggle the two different aspects of the histogram here in order to accomplish the mission. So in our mission here, set up thorn palm population where all the thorn palms have medium. So every single one of these thorn palms needs to have a medium size set of thorns. You'll have to figure out which spot do I leave the bottom toggle, which spot do I leave the top toggle, so they all would have a medium set of thorns. And then you'll need to screenshot this section here for the slideshow. Now, it's going to test your understanding of variation. It's going to test your understanding of distribution. And if you have questions, reach out. Otherwise, good luck.